Okay, welcome to the Read Aloud for day 42. You know, I came up with a version that's a little bit different of the calm down song I've been working on this weekend. It goes kind of like this. Let's see. Still working on it. Okay, let's see, where were we? We are almost done. Okay. That was quick, Kendra said. It will probably end up down with Mendingo. The Naiads respect the Fairy Queen. They'll make sure the bowl ends up where it belongs. Kendra looked at the pier. She may not know you, Grandpa said. I just wanted to say goodbye, whether she gets it or not. They walked along the boardwalk until they reached the gazebo adjoining the pier. Kendra walked out to the end of the pier. Grandpa stayed a few steps behind her. Remember, not too close to the water. I know, Kendra said. She leaned forward to look down into the pond. It was much clearer than it had been at night. She jumped a little when she realized that the face looking up at her was not her reflection. The Naiad looked like a girl of about 16 with full lips and a profusion of golden hair swirling about a face shaped like a valentine. I want to talk to Lena, Kendra said loudly, overpronouncing the words. She may not come, Grandpa said. The Naiads kept staring up at her. Get Lena, please, Kendra repeated. The Naiads swam away. She'll come, Kendra asserted. They waited. Nobody came. Kendra studied the water. She turned her hands into a megaphone around her mouth. Lena, this is Kendra. I want to speak with you. Several minutes passed. Grandpa waited with her patiently. Then a face rose almost to the surface of the water right at the end of the dock. It was Lena. Her hair was still white with a few black strands. Though she looked no younger, her face had the same ageless quality. Lena, hi, it's Kendra, remember? Lena smiled. Her face was barely an inch from the surface. I just wanted to say goodbye. I really enjoyed our talks. I hope you don't mind being a Naiad again. Are you mad at me? Lena motioned for Kendra to come closer. She put her hand by her mouth like she wanted to share a secret. Her almond eyes looked mirthful and excited. They did not match the white hair. Kendra bent down a little bit. What? Kendra asked. Lena rolled her eyes and motioned for her to come closer. Kendra crouched a little more, and at the same instant that Lena reached up for her, Grandpa Sorensen pulled her back. I told you, Grandpa said. She is no longer the woman she was back at the house. Kendra leaned forward just enough to peer over the edge again. Lena stuck her tongue out and swam away. At least she isn't suffering, Kendra said. Grandpa walked her back to the gazebo in silence. She told me she would never choose to return to life as a Naiad, Kendra said after a while. She said it more than once. I'm sure she meant it, Grandpa said. From where I stood, it didn't look like she went willingly. I noticed the same thing. I'm worried she might be suffering. I thought maybe she needed us to save her. Are you satisfied? Grandpa asked. I'm not even sure she remembered me, Kendra admitted. At first I thought she did, but I bet she was faking, trying to get me close enough to drown me, probably. She doesn't miss being human. Not from her current point of view, Grandpa agreed. Much like how being a Naiad did not sound very fulfilling to her from a mortal perspective. Why would the fairies do that to her? I don't think they saw it as a punishment. Lena was probably a victim of good intentions, but Lena was arguing with them. She didn't want to go. Grandpa shrugged. The fairies might have known that once they restored her, she would change her mind. Looks like they were right. Remember, the fairies experience existence like Naiads. From their point of view, Lena was out of her mind wanting to be mortal. They probably thought they were curing her insanity. I'm glad they restored everybody else, Kendra said. They just restored Lena too much. Are you sure? She was a Naiad to begin with. She didn't like the idea of aging. At least she won't die now or get any older. No, she won't. I still think she would rather be human. Grandpa frowned. You may be right. Truth be told, if I knew a way to reclaim Lena, I would. I believe once she was mortal again, she would be grateful. But a naiad can only descend to mortality voluntarily. In her current state, I doubt she would make that choice. I am sure she is very disoriented. Probably in time she will gain some perspective. What's it like for her? No way to be sure. For all I know, this is a unique occurrence. Her memories of mortality are apparently distorted if she retains them at all. Kendra unconsciously twisted the sleeve of her shirt, a pained expression on her face. So we just leave her there? For now, I will do some research and give the matter considerable thought. Don't tear yourself up about it. Lena would not want you to. The alternative was being devoured by a demon, and she looked all right to me. They started back toward the wagon. What about the Society of the Evening Star? Asked Kendra. Are they still a threat? Muriel said she was in contact with them. Grandpa pinched his bottom lip. The society will be a threat as long as it endures. It is difficult for an uninvited guest to gain access to a preserve, mortal or not. Some would say impossible, but the society has shown repeated resourcefulness at circumventing so-called impossible obstacles. Fortunately, we foiled their attempts to use Muriel to free Bahamut and overthrow the preserve. But we now know they have learned the whereabouts of Fablehaven, and we will have to be more vigilant than ever. What secret artifact is hidden here? It is unfortunate that your grandmother had to share that secret with you. I realize it was a precaution in case both of us were incapacitated, but the knowledge is a terrible burden to place on children. You must never speak of it. I have tried to impress that idea on Seth as well. Heaven help us all. I am the caretaker of Fablehaven, and I know little about the artifact save that it is hidden somewhere on this property. If members of the Society of the Evening Star are aware that the artifact is here, and we have every reason to believe they are, they will stop at nothing to penetrate our defenses and lay their hands on it. What will you do? Kendra said. What we always do, Grandpa said. Consult with our allies and take every measure to ensure that our defenses remain intact. The Society has known the location of dozens of preserves for centuries, and yet has failed to infiltrate them. They may pay us extra attention, but unless we let down our guard, there is little they can do. What about the ghost lady, the one who escaped while the fairies were trapping Bahamut? I do not know her story, except that she was obviously colluding with their enemies. I have never met many of the dark beings who lurk in the inhospitable corners of Fablehaven. They reached the wagon. Grandpa boosted Kendra up and then climbed in herself. Hugo, take us home. They rode in silence. Kendra considered all they had discussed and the fate of Lena and the impending threat of the Society of the Evening Star. The fateful night that had seemed like the end of her problems was starting to look like the beginning. Up ahead, off to the side of the road, Dale was chopping a fallen tree into firewood. Drenched in sweat, he swung his axe aggressively. As the wagon rolled by, he glanced up at Kendra. She smiled and waved. Dave gave a tight smile and looked away, returning to his chore. Kendra frowned. What's up with Dale lately? Do you think being turned into lead traumatized him? I doubt he felt a thing. He's beating himself up over something else. What? Don't say a word about this to him, Grandpa paused, glancing back toward Dale, and then went on speaking. He feels bad that his brother Warren wasn't present when the fairies were curing everybody. Grandma said Dale's brother is catatonic. I still haven't met him. Could the fairies have helped? Grandpa shrugged. Considering that they put Lena back in the water, changed the imps back into fairies, and remade Hugo out of a pile of rubble, yes, I imagine they could have cured Warren. Theoretically, any magic that can be done can also be undone. Grandpa scratched his cheek. You have to understand. Last week I would have said that there was no possible way of curing Warren. Believe me, I have investigated the subject thoroughly, but I've never heard of an imp changing back into a fairy either. It simply doesn't happen. I wish I'd thought of it, Kendra said. Warren didn't even cross my mind. Not your fault in the slightest. Warren just wasn't in the right place at the right time. I am grateful the rest of us were. How did Warren get like that? That, my dear, is a part of the problem. We have no idea. He disappeared for 3 days. On the 4th day, he returned white as a sheet. He sat down in the garden and hasn't said a word or responded to anyone since. He can chew food and walk if you lead him. He can even do some simple chores if you get him started. But no communication. His mind has flown. Hugo stopped at the edge of the yard. Grandpa and Kendra climbed down. Hugo, see to your chores. The golem hauled the cart away. I'm going to miss this place, Kendra said, taking taking in the bright flowers attended by the glittering fairies. Your grandmother and I have waited a long time to find somebody like you among our posterity, Grandpa said. Trust me, you'll be back. Kendra, Grandma called up the stairs. Your folks are here. I'll be right down. Kendra sat alone on her bed in the playroom. Seth was already downstairs. She had packed her bags and helped him with his. Kendra sighed. When her parents had first dropped her off, she had counted the days until their return. Now she almost felt reluctant to see them. Since they knew nothing about the magical nature of the preserve, there was no way they could possibly relate to what she'd experienced. The only person she could share it with was Seth. Anyone else would think she was insane. Oh, I gotta get a drink. Hold on. Okay. Just thinking about it made her feel isolated. Kendra crossed the room to the painting she had done of the pond. It was a perfect keepsake from her stay. A paint by numbers drawn by a naiad depicting the location of the bravest act of her life. Yet she hesitated to bring it. Would the image stir too many painful memories? Many of her experiences here had been dreadful. She and her family had nearly been killed, and she had lost a new friend when Lena was returned to the pond. At the same time, the painting might make her long for the enchanted world of the preserve. So many aspects of Fablehaven were wonderful. Life would seem so dry after the extraordinary events of the past couple of weeks. Either way, the painting might cause her pain, but of course those memories would persist with or without the picture of the pond. She picked it up. The rest of her bags were already downstairs. She cast a final glance around the playroom, treasuring up the details, and walked out the door. She went down the stairs, along the hall, and started down the staircase to the entry hall. Her mom and her dad stood in the entry hall, smiling up at her. They had notably gained weight, especially Dad. He looked 20 pounds heavier. Seth stood near Dad, clutching his painting of the dragon. You did a painting too, Mom exclaimed. Kendra, it's gorgeous. I had help, she said, reaching the bottom of the stairs. How was the cruise? We had a lot of memories, Mom said. Looks like Dad ate plenty of snails, Seth said. Dad rubbed his belly. Nobody warned me about all the desserts. You ready, honey? Mom said, putting an arm around Kendra. Aren't you going to look around? Kendra asked. Well, we walked the grounds a bit while you were upstairs and toured the lower rooms. Was there something in particular you wanted to show us? Not really. We should get going, Dad said, opening the front door. Not too many days ago, that door had been mangled and an arrow had protruded from the frame. Outside, Dale was loading the last of their bags into the SUV. Grandma and Grandpa waited nearby on the driveway. Dad helped Kendra and Seth load their paintings while Mom thanked Grandma and Grandma Sorensen profusely. It was our pleasure, Grandma said earnestly. You'll have to let them visit again sometime soon, Grandpa insisted. I'd like that, Kendra said. Me too, Seth agreed. Seth and Kendra hugged their grandparents goodbye and then climbed into the SUV. Grandpa winked at Kendra. Dad started the engine. You kids have a good time? Yeah, Seth said. Amazing, Kendra added. Remember how worried you were when we dropped you off? Mom said as she buckled her seatbelt. I bet it wasn't half as scary as you imagined. Kendra and Seth shared a very special look. That's the end of the book, guys.